Welcome to The Truth in His Heart. I am your host, Rob Lee, and today I have the privilege of being in conversation with a photographer, restaurateur, immigrant, sustainability advocate, and humanitarian, the co-owner with her husband, Mark Demshak, and executive chef David Zamudio of Alma Cocina Latina restaurant located in Station North. Please welcome Irena Stein. Welcome to the podcast.
Hola, how are you? Thank you so much for having me.
I'm great. How are you?
I'm excellent.
See,
It's warmer outside, and that makes me feel very good. And the garden is about to explode.
That's going to be great. And yeah, judging by yesterday, because we have some talking to talk. We have some talking to do here. I will say that everything was just super fresh yesterday, and it was just herbaceous. I was like, this is great. And even though the temperature is great today, I am not dressed properly. I'm dressed like it's still the fall time. So we'll see what happens for me. I think I'm going to take this shirt off and go into the t-shirt a little bit later. So as I start off, I want to have you introduce yourself. Like, give us your introduction, because I gave that copy and paste offline. It was very sparse, obviously. So, could you introduce yourself and really tell us how we got here to you being one of the most popping restaurants in Baltimore and in Station North area? Tell us how we got here.
So, I arrived in Baltimore in 1998 from San Francisco. And at the time I was in the arts, at jewelry. But originally my profession is anthropology. So, after the towers fell, in New York, there was a big change in the art community, and I needed to somehow survive. Because my daughter was going to college at the time, and everyone in my environment encouraged me to turn to food, which was my big passion and hobby. But I didn't want to go at it professionally because I know so many people that burn out from it. So anyway, out of need, right? Need is the mother of invention. Necessity is the mother of invention.
Yes.
Sure enough. I started catering in the art galleries because that was my field and my world at the time. Then that turned into going and opening 2 cafes at Hopkins. For the last 20 years. I mean, I was there 15 years total. And then with that experience at those cafes and feeding the academic community and the students and so forth, with catering, we started catering, in the city at large. And every time we had Latin food on the menu, which we were very diverse, what we were doing, people loved it so much that it was sold out so quickly that I decided to open a Venezuelan arepa bar. Originally, it was going to be an arepa bar.
Yeah.
Well, that didn't work out. And Bill Strieger, who's a wonderful man in this city, visionary in the city, offered me a space that was way too big for an arepa bar and said, hey, how about a Venezuelan restaurant? And so, without a thought, here we were in a much bigger sphere, in an unknown sphere. It's very different to have a full-time restaurant, a full restaurant than 2 cafes. And so it started. It started in Canton. With a fantastic chef that came from Venezuela, actually. And we started then growing this Venezuelan community and Venezuelan culture within the space that we created in Canton. Mm-hmm. In Canton, we stayed 5 years at the Can Company. And then during COVID, for many reasons too long to explain right here, we had the good fortune to come to Station North.
Yes.
And that was an extraordinary opportunity for Alma, because Station North is a jewel of a place because of all the arts that exist in it, because of the community that's so adventurous and so out there and so open and enthusiastic. And so that, created a much better space for our food, a much better language understanding. And then we began to thrive. Over here. It took us all that time. It took us all the 5 years in Canton and finally arriving to Station North, which is from the beginning where we should have been. But, you have to pay dues in karma, I guess. And
no, it worked out. And, I would take a step back. You mentioned one of the cafes. Was that as a firm?
Yes.
I used to go there all the time.
What?
Yeah. I believe there's a bocadillo on the menu.
Oh, how interesting.
We've been circling that.
That's interesting.
I worked above the can company for a while as well.
Oh my! I can't believe it.
I wanted to hold off on that and tell you in person.
That is so funny because it's a very odd location. The Space Telescope Institute is a very odd location for a cafe that was known in the city.
Yeah.
But I mean, how can you not feed these fabulous people that are the eyes of the universe, right? For humanity. So it was a big honor to be there.
Yeah, I was there. That was the lunch place for me every day, and seeing like opportunities to explore in the menu. And I was like, okay, there's some interesting things in here. I was like, there are items that were accessible in that. It's like, okay, there was a French fries. I know what these are, but then I'm doing my Euro version of it. People would make fun. It's like, why are you putting mayonnaise in your French fries? Like, look, it's here and it's delicious. And that was the first place where I had a San Pellegrino. So I just felt like super adventurous and just trying different things that were on the menu. And to extend even into yesterday, when my partner and I were able to go to the restaurant and check it out, and again, whenever I would have anyone come there to visit me on campus, I would say, hey, you need to come to this restaurant with me. And I'm their Sherpa, I'm their introductory point to this food.
Cool.
And that extends to Alma yesterday, as, you know, I brought my girlfriend there, and we're trying all of these different things that are on the menu, and it's really a walk through like culture and an entry point to Venezuelan food for us. So could you share a few words that come to mind when describing Venezuelan food?
So first of all, it's fantastic to have one of the best restaurants, Venezuelan restaurants in the country here in Baltimore. Actually, it started in Baltimore and then it's expanded to DC, which normally is the contrary that happens.
Yes.
But no, I'm very proud to say that Alma is actually the alma mater of many great chefs that then started going to different cities around the United States and opening different places or being part of really great restaurants. So we, our focus on immigration, especially Venezuelan immigration, is very important to us.
Sure.
Because we have an exodus of 6 million people since the dictatorship, hangs on tight over there, and the economy is disastrous and medical is disastrous and so forth. But in the good, shiny part of it, it was a little bit of a challenge in the beginning, thinking, oh my God, a Venezuelan restaurant in Baltimore, that's crazy. But the idea behind the restaurant is, of course, to show the enormous rich heritage of culture from that country of the Caribbean, that, of course, has all the cultural influences that we talked a little bit prior our conversation right now, from Spain, of course, during colonization time, and because Spain was under Moorish influence for so many centuries, we have then also this impact or influence of North African food, which combines savory and sweet a lot, with the dry foods and the nuts. That's how they combine the sweetness. And you'll find oftentimes in Venezuelan food an element of sweetness somewhere.
Yes.
So that's really, really important that comes. And then, so that whole influence comes to Venezuela and then encounters all the indigenous foods, that territory would come from the tropical environment, a rainforest environment, a mountainous environment from the Andes. So we have this incredible richness in the geography of Venezuela. And so we have access to so many varieties of food. So during the independence, you can see the two worlds of, those who want to leave Europe and Spain behind and want to establish themselves independently from the crown, and meeting all these local flavors at the table, and then you start seeing at the table the whole combination of all those foods coming together. And from Venezuela, of course, primarily corn and yuca, which makes it, ideally a gluten-free, which is great for a lot of people, but also, wheat that was brought from Spain was no longer the center of the table.
Right.
It was corn and it was the arepa. And that's how the history of the arepa starts right there. And that's why it's so important that the arepa is looked upon. And it is the ambassador of our food culture, in the world. Because every Venezuelan that lives in the world right now is bringing arepas with them and introducing them everywhere. So we are also very fortunate to have had, now we have our second chef. So the first chef, Enrique Limardo, is in DC with these great restaurants, got a Michelin star last week, which is great.
Congrats.
And we have a very young chef, David Zamudio, who has worked extremely hard since he's 16 years old, all over the place, and polishing all his techniques, but also watching so much imagination in gastronomy. And I think what you see at Alma, all that imagination, is the translation of all those years that he has spent working so very hard. It's also a very particular line of gastronomy in Venezuela, because Venezuela in the 70s, when money was flowing like crazy in the street because of the oil industry, Venezuelans thought that foreign food was the best. So we had Italian, we had French, we had Chinese, we had this, and everything, but really good. And a lot of good chefs were coming because there was so much money, and people were spending money like no tomorrow. But then all these chefs from the generation that is now 45, 50 years old, they really started when they went abroad to train, especially in Spain, in San Sebastian, and all these Michelin places in Europe. They came back and realized, hey, we're keeping Venezuelan food as traditional, and then we're doing all this creative stuff with foreign food. What are we doing? And so started this whole movement, and actually in this century, this whole movement of creating very imaginative food with our own food from the tropics. So that's why we include plantain, and we include yuca, and we include cilantro, and we include ají, and all that. And right now, what we're trying to do is establish somehow a connection between rainforest and Alma, which is only found at the bar right now because of the quantities that I only can bring in my suitcase, because there's no shipping, that is happening from Venezuela. But I'm really trying hard to, instead of farm to table, which is wonderful, but to have rainforest to table, because it's for us a very important cultural aspect of our food that we'd like to introduce here in Baltimore. And we are the first ones actually to introduce it in the United States, which is great. We have lemon ants, we have ajíes or chilies from the rainforest that nobody has. We have hot sauces made out of yuca from the Pemon Indians in the Tepuy area. And nobody has those things, and you can have them as our cocktail, because we don't have enough, to offer from the kitchen. But once we establish that road from Venezuela to here in a shipping mode, we then can start playing with those ingredients in the kitchen as well.
It's amazing, and definitely it's the culture vibe is there. It felt like we were traveling in a different place, like knowing that we were in Baltimore, loving Baltimore, but also being in a place that felt like, did we bring our passports? Are we good? That's literally what it felt like. And seeing I guess the word that comes to mind for me, just in terms of ambiance, is tropical. It felt tropical. It felt like I was on a holiday, like on a vacation of sorts. And then as items that are coming out, like we have a pretty diverse palette, right? And as items are coming out and they are familiar things, like I've never had a dumpling with plantain in it. And I was like, okay, that's unique. And I'm sitting there remarking on it because that's how I consume. And it reminded me of just other places that I've gone to and being able to, like, in a few days after, speak with like, oh, you're the person behind this, or you're the person that's running this place, and what have you. So it was I was very fortunate. It was a treat. And, definitely a place I'm going back to. And again, I'm telling people like, look, man, you gotta go to Alma. Like, what are you doing?
Thank you.
So you're welcome. It's my understanding that restaurants, because like I said, I'm a foodie. I'm probably a chef that's not a chef. Who knows? it's my understanding that restaurants work on a very thin margin, and with changes that have happened, we had a lot of like things cost differently now, and things are pretty wild. With those thin margins in mind, what are some of those hard decisions that you have to make as running a restaurant in terms of maybe the menu, in terms of how you go about certain facets of the restaurant? Like, all right, we might be meat free for this week, or we might go sourcing this way. Tell me about that a little bit, especially with just the increase of cost of things recently.
Mm-hmm. Interesting question. Well, the costs are higher. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
And
inflation, right?
We're trying not to. Well, and the meat choice actually has, and the fact that we don't have a lot of meat in the menu is more due to our conscience about awareness, about climate change than anything. So we have a lot of fish and we have vegetables, a lot of vegetarian, and we are now focusing on vegan in the next coming months. There are a lot of vegan ingredients that are not available right now. So it makes it a little bit hard for the chef, but that's the direction with it. We try not to sabotage any quality at all in the choice of our ingredients, and we pay what we have to pay, because what you have in your plate is premium quality no matter what. So yes, our percentages are way higher than they should be in terms of food costs and labor, but it's the reality of it. And at the same time, the challenge is, how do we remain democratic at the same time? Because we want a place where everybody feels welcome, that you can come and have a drink and have a little bit to eat, or you can come and have a sophisticated, fabulous, 5-course if you want, dinner, but all coexisting together, which I think is, for me, and in Baltimore especially, and in the world, this is the way to go. And it creates tremendous, interesting community rapports and dialogues and interactions within the restaurant that, for me personally, I treasure enormously, since I live in the front of the house, and I am very, very sensitive to that community that comes into Alma. So we'll see what happens in the future. We're really trying not to up the prices. In some things, it's been hard, because for the fish, for example, we never have anything frozen. So to have fresh fish delivered every 2 days for the ceviche, you see the portion of ceviche, and some people say, hey, whoa, this is small for $20. And said, yeah, but it's this red snapper that comes every 2 days, totally fresh. And it's very expensive to get right now, red snappers. So I think people, if they shop for food and for fresh food, they realize how the costs compared to a year ago, how the costs have increased. A person that eats more frozen food or more processed foods might find the prices, like not so approachable, of course. But anyway, we're trying so hard. And I think that what has made it work is that so many people are coming to visit Alma every day. And we thank every single person that comes, because every single person that comes and the abundance of the wonderful guests that are coming make it possible for us to continue that quality of food. Because the problem is that if we don't have guests coming, and a lot of the guests coming in order to, to let us purchase all this wonderful food, we would then have to reduce the menu considerably. We would have to, like you say, we would have to think in different ways, like we've done in the past when we were in Canton, actually. So we had a practice of that, but it's hard. The creativity will never change, though, and the level of imagination and the quality would never change. But right now, we appreciate everyone coming in, because it allows us to live and it allows us to create.
And living in creation is what that area is about, really. And I think with Station North and it being like having now 2 really, really good restaurants there now fills in a gap that's been missing over there with Alma and with Foraged over there. It's just like right there. Then you have the comedy clubs that we were talking about yesterday, and these different things. It's like foot traffic. It's like, which place are you going to go to? Where are you going to have a meal? Where are you going to have a drink? And
Hellman was too alone there. Tapas Teatro was there, and just very alone, but now we keep him company.
Yeah. And, you know, again, it's still one of those places where I think we'll see what happens with like the new train developments and things of that nature. It's more foot traffic and it's food that's very approachable. And like, I know because I have a refined palate. Like, I noticed all the freshness. I was like, oh, that's cilantro right there. And really going through it. And it just works. And every element in it, like I do a movie review podcast and I have this bit I call one fix, right? I was like, yeah, if a movie is good, it's still always one thing. So I apply that to many areas, including restaurants. And there's not one that comes to mind. It's just like top to bottom, from service to quality of food to just folks being attentive. It's like, no, Alma's great. It works. And more people just need to pull up and check it out. And it's a great place.
Thanks so much again.
You're welcome. I know I'm gassing you up a little bit, but it's true. It's true. So now let's talk about, like, I guess leadership. And it sounds really weird, right? Leadership, because it's like, hey, man, I'm just doing my thing. Yeah, this is what I do. So I like to like pick the brain of people who are running something and very successful at what they're doing. Is there like a book or something, or maybe probably a book that's come to mind that has really had an influence on you professionally? Like, I read that and I got some really great illuminations out of it, or I learned like a lot from this book. Now I follow this author. Is there a book that comes to mind for you?
Well, my personal training it comes very much from my practice of Buddhism. I have been a Buddhist now for 49 years, a long time. Crazy great. No, 49, 43. I don't know. Since 1973. How old is that? I don't know. But that's how many years I've been practicing. And I would say that that's the guideline of my life and the way I try to lead whatever we're doing, because the world tends to be so much into antagonism and pointing fingers and accusations and and within the restaurant industry you see a lot of gossip as well that has existed, and it's so easy to try to look down on this person, talk bad about this person, and people feel very important when they do that. And it's a horrendous habit that we have in our society that then, translates in the way we read news. Why aren't the big discoveries of humanity on the front page? Why is it always the war? So people are constantly looking at each other in antagonism. And so what we're trying to do, and it's not easy because everybody is brought up to go like this,
yes,
is to try that no matter how big our differences can be, to try to look at each other in a different way. And I think it's a way to dismantle the divides also in this city, the divides not only in racism, but also in the way we perceive society and the way we are and who we are. So, I mean, for us, even a Venezuelan restaurant, we are all immigrants there. Yeah. And Venezuela is known for what? Beauty queens and a dictatorship. Oh, and oil. And oil. But,
I don't know if all of those are great.
Exactly. And so, the idea of showing that as immigrants also, we are doing something great and contributing to the United States, contributing to local culture, to contributing to diversity in everything we do in our endeavors and our ways to look at things and the ways of speaking, etc. But going back to the book, it's rather a philosophy. Yeah. To try to, especially because we work with a lot of young people, it's a philosophy to turn that around and see our differences more as an enriching factor, yeah, instead of, like, how do you say, separation or destruction from each other, or lack of respect for each other. That for me is fundamental, is to raise the humanity within the restaurant. The restaurant industry comes from very military terms, 19th century France. And in a lot of restaurants, even if they say, oh, I'm buying local and I'm all organic and I'm this and I'm that, But then the treatment
what's happening in the
between
kitchen?
humans is so medieval. And personally, I'm extremely sensitive to that. And I know it's really difficult. There's machismo involved, or there are people that are trained in very militaristic kitchens, and they come with a very strict way and very strict dynamic. But the idea is that treatment with respect, for me, is something that has to be developed, and it's a constant work. It's not just magic. Oh, that sounds pretty. Let's do it. No, because everybody has the ingrained habits. Yeah. But somehow we've got to win that, because the only way to do a democratic place, and also to expand the beauty, not only of the food and the cocktails, but in general, the humanity within a place. So.
And I think with it, one of the things that happens is, it's almost like when you have someone's like, we all read the same book, so you're going to have the same ideologies. If you all kind of had the same experience or the same sort of training, then you're just splintering off. It's like when that new generation of folks comes along, that's like, maybe this isn't the way we should run a kitchen. Maybe this isn't the way we should treat our staff. Maybe we should be more inclined and to look at people as humans, as people, and have some humanity and generosity and approachability. And the conversations that I've had with folks recently in that hospitality realm, because at the end of the day, that's what it is. It's hospitality.
Absolutely.
And there's no room for that militaristic thing. There's no room for that like kind of dictator stuff. You have a standard that you're going to approach, and kind of, this is how we do things. But you know how like businesses will say, people are our best resources, but then treat their people like crap? It's that, can we get back to treating people like people first, and then kind of extending from there to have what our culture is? I think that's how you develop a likable culture.
Yeah. And also, I mean, it's a constant seduction to those who have a harder time coming into a more democratic realm, but we got to work together. It's the only way.
And I think even doing this has made me more aware to how people operate. That's why I asked some of the questions out of like, one, sheer curiosity, but two, how is this different? And maybe someone listening that maybe works in a restaurant, that maybe is an artist, it's like, you know what, I should do this differently. Maybe I am doing that. Maybe I should be able to empathize a bit better. And listening to this conversation might help people with that. So I got the book out of the way. All right.
There was no book.
There was none. It was
just experience.
Yeah, it's the book of life.
The book of life. Yeah, exactly. It's a book of life. You're right on.
So I got two more real questions, and then I got those rapid fire questions that everyone loves. So within the entrepreneurial journey, right? We have our ups, we have our downs, but a lot of times I think we miss that moment. Like, at least I know for me, when I'm doing this, like a podcast, or I'm doing like I'm nervous always. Especially when it's in front of people or in front of a stage. It's like, I'm going to be terrible. And then I'm usually really good, right? So, but there's an excitement there. I think that's what it is. Could you share one of like more exciting moments for you during your career?
The exciting moment is to see people smile when they're having a bite to eat at our place. It truly is. I like to watch all the body language, and I like to watch the faces of people when they're trying and they're looking at their guests, and they're looking at their partner or their friend or whatever. And for me, that is the height of happiness. And to know that the place that we work so hard at is loved by the community. For me, that's the ultimate happiness. It really is. Because it's so hard. The industry is so hard. That our biggest reward is in those faces, and it's also in the dialogue with our guests, and dialoguing about the food and the culture and how they liked it and so forth. And there are many people that have enjoyed our food, and that makes us very happy.
That's great. That is great. Thank you. That's real when you hear it on occasion. Like I said, I've talked to people in the industry, and they'll talk about like, no, it's like, you gotta love this. Like, it's hard. You gotta love it.
Yeah, you gotta be a little bit insane to do this, to live in this industry. So whenever people say, I want to open a restaurant, I said, over my dead body. You have to go through my testing, and then by the end of the testing, you still want to open a restaurant. I'll still challenge you even further, because you know that you won't have private life. You know that it's going to be a challenge to be off, at all times. And so it's a big commitment, and you better know what's coming, and you better know that you have to be in it, because if you're not in it and you run it from afar, it ain't gonna work.
No, you gotta just be in it. And that's one of my rapid fire questions I think you're gonna appreciate. So this is the last one, and this kind of goes back into that line, because we try to, on this podcast, we try to give out those gems and those jewels for people who are listening. So what do you think, are the 3 traits that come to mind for, and I know that it's dipped in Buddhism, I'm starting to notice, but what are those 3 traits that come to mind that make you I've only heard good things about Alma, only heard good things about you. So in that, what are those 3 traits that you feel that make you successful, that make you kind of beloved and appreciated for the work that you're doing? And with it, this is the caveat. What was the hardest to master? Like, people would ask me, like, why do you do this? And it's like, I try to be authentic and all of these other traits. And it's like, what's the hardest one? It's like, talking to people. Eye contact sometimes is hard. What is a hard trait for you to master that you know that you're doing within your work, but what was hard for you to master?
Wow. I think it was, and yes, the practice of Buddhism helps a lot, to continuously hold the confidence that in the end we will win. In the end, we'll succeed. Because the amount of obstacles that come your way, especially on that philosophical sense that I'm telling you, it's really hard to try to open a realm, of humanity that way, and to keep it going and to really transform a whole space of people together, that I find to be very hard and sometimes disheartening because of the gossip that I'm telling you, or because the training, previous training of people and the way they've learned to be in the world, etc. However, but the perseverance is something that every day you need to really thrive, to have that trust in life that you can succeed, and put all the love that you can possibly have inside you to do your work. But that's been, and the courage too. It's always the courage is another factor that we need to have. It's another trait of life that we really need when we want to accomplish dreams. And it seems so impossible. I had a lot of lack of self-esteem when I was very young, because we grew up in different places, and so I didn't know exactly how to find myself in the world, and that put me in a situation of low self-esteem when I was in my late teens. And it was very hard to jump out of that and say, no, I can be in the world, but with all those cultures combined, and I can do something with it, instead of trying to imitate people or just saying, it was hard. But again, jumping with courage, do this, and then courage, because I continuously have stage fright, especially in catering. Those things are real, the anxiety and all that. However, the exercise of developing courage has really helped to overcome that. And so I just care for people and for humanity tremendously. Yeah. And then through work is where I can, experience whether we're contributing or not in our society and in our community. And that's why I care so much of what happens inside those walls. But it's courage, because we're all so different. We come from in a city also that has been so divided. Yeah. And so I am so sensitive to that. And as a foreigner, I don't sometimes have the right words that I use, or I might sound politically incorrect, or I'm older. And so then I don't master a lot of the slang, and I don't master a lot of the language, but that's the way it is. And so those things are fears. They're legitimate fears. But we have to keep on going, because the dream is to create something extremely special in the city. So.
Yeah, I think it's it's something to be applauded to want to create something special in the city and in Baltimore and Station North, because it is one of many, but one of those like beacons, those cultural hubs that is just right there. It's concentrated. And I think Alma is a welcome addition to the neighborhood.
Thanks so much. We love it there.
So now it's time for the rapid fire questions. Mm-hmm. And so all of the goodwill that we've established, it's all going to go out of the window. It's going to get weird. So the thing with this, we're going to try to answer these as quickly as possible. I'm going to throw you a softball to start this off, though. For those who are undipped, what does Alma mean?
Alma means soul in Spanish. Yes. And as a soul, it's the heart of the community. So the name Alma is because we want Alma to be, or our space to be, a heart, a place for gathering for our community.
See, told you softball.
Yeah, that's a softball.
All right. Describe, now, don't have to be like a sentence or anything, but describe Baltimore in 3 words. When you think of Baltimore, what are the first 3 words that come to mind?
Wow. It's a city with, in the middle of a Renaissance time for it. It's a city with a very deep history, which I love, but a history that needs to be transformed. And I think that the young generations now are definitely working very hard and passionately to transform its past and make something extraordinary out of it.
Anthropology. Now, this is for me because, like I said, I'm a foodie and I like to steal ideas, borrow ideas. What Venezuelan snack do you enjoy the most? Like, you mentioned chocolate before we got started as kind of like one of those things. What is the go-to? There's a lot of exports that I'm learning about. So what's the snack that comes to mind?
Chocolate is huge. Chocolate is huge in our country. And our chocolate from Venezuela goes all over the world to the best chocolatiers in the world. And 10% of the production goes to the artisans in Venezuela. And then every time I go, I bring a lot of it. But my other favorite is plantains.
Speaking my language right now.
I'm a plantain lover like you would not believe. I think it's the best.
What is your favorite way to have plantains? Just like chips? How do you like them?
No. Fried plantains.
Oh,
super maduros.
Yeah.
They're very ripe plantains. Fried. Yes.
The
chef can tell you how many times I ask, oh, please, can you put some plantains on this meal? He looks at me, that is so you.
That's how I got my girlfriend, actually. I make plantains pretty well. Like, my first job out of college, it was in a Spanish-speaking call center. So I picked up a few tricks. It's like, look, make sure the skin is like almost black, bro. I was like, what do you mean?
Yes. Yes. The only way.
So this is the last question I got for you. Finish this sentence. When I'm not at Alma, what are you doing when you're not at Alma?
I'm doing photography, or I'm in the garden, or I'm with my grandchildren, or I'm visiting friends, or I have so many ors because I love life.
That's great to hear, though. It definitely is reflected. So yeah, that's that, I think. So thank you for coming to this podcast. And I want to invite and encourage you to tell the fine folks where to check you out, to check out Alma, all of the good stuff. So feel free to tell folks where to find you online and all of that stuff.
Okay, so it's very simple. It's Alma Cocina Latina. If you go for Alma Cocina, you'll find yourself in Atlanta, Georgia. So you don't want to go there. Instagram is Alma Cocina Latina. The website is Alma Cocina Latina. And my email is irena@almacocinalatina.com.
So there you have it, folks. For Irena Stein, I am Rob Lee saying that there is community, art, heart, soul in and around Baltimore. You just have to look for it.